The ancient scroll is open. The ink has not faded. The voices of the prophets still echo through the chambers of time, calling out to a generation asleep at the wheel. And now the eyes of the nations are locked on one small sliver of land in the Middle East, Israel. But the question must be asked, what lies ahead? Who stands in her crosshairs? And more importantly, who stands in God's? Jeremiah 49. A prophecy so ancient and yet so explosive that most dare not touch it. But it speaks, it declares, it unveils what has been sealed. Against Elam, says the word, Elam, the region we now know as part of modern-day Iran, a land of ancient empires and nuclear ambitions. A regime built on hatred, deception, and the vow to wipe Israel off the map. But heaven has heard, and heaven has answered. For I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. These words aren't random. They're divine intelligence. The bow, the weapon of power. In today's language, it's the missile, the warhead, the nuclear program. The prophecy declares that this power will be shattered not by man, not by diplomacy, but by the sovereign hand of God. And what do we see now? Israel, vigilant, alert, preparing in silence. The world mocks, the UN condemns, but behind closed doors, war rooms are active, jets are fueled, red lines are drawn. Iran dares to provoke, but Israel watches not with fear, but with ancient memory. For she has faced Pharaohs, Babylonians, Persians, Nazis, and terrorists, yet she stands. And now comes the turn. The target may not be declared, but has already been written. Not by generals, but by prophets. And the clock is ticking. The bow of Elam is poised, but heaven is already moving. The prophecy doesn't end with destruction. It ends with redemption. For out of the ashes of judgment comes a remnant, a return, a restoration. But judgment will come first. Swift, precise, and undeniable. So what we are witnessing is not political tension, it's prophetic fulfillment. Nations will tremble, alliances will shatter, leaders will fall, but the word will stand. Israel is not targeting her enemies, heaven is, and Israel is the arrow. So the question is no longer who Israel is targeting, the question is, who has dared to target Israel? For the one who touches her touches the apple of God's eye. The countdown has begun. The warning has sounded. The prophecy is unfolding. And the God of Israel, the Lion of Judah, is not silent. Jeremiah 49 speaks with ancient authority, yet its message reverberates with terrifying clarity into our present moment. The verse says, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. This isn't poetry. It is a divine military intelligence briefing from heaven. The bow in ancient times was the long-range weapon, the symbol of projected power, the equivalent of a modern-day missile or warhead. Elam, situated in the western region of ancient Persia, overlaps with present-day Iran. And it is no coincidence that the modern Islamic Republic of Iran has placed its greatest strength, its chief of might, in its missile program and nuclear aspirations. Thousands of rockets are pointed toward Israel. Underground facilities are working around the clock. The regime funds terror proxies across the Middle East. They chant death to Israel, they scheme destruction, and they gamble with fire. But in the midst of their bravado stands this prophecy, quietly thunderous, waiting for its moment. The bow shall be broken. That is not just defeat, it is disarmament. The very weapon on which Elam relies, the very threat it brandishes before the world, will be shattered. And how will be broken? Not by politics, not by global deals or diplomatic handshakes. The word doesn't say Israel will break it or America will negotiate it. It says, I will break. This is God himself intervening in the affairs of empires. This is divine judgment, and it does not need permission to act. When that happens, it will be swift. It will be surgical. And it will expose the fragility of all who rise up against his purposes. Iran's ambitions are not merely geopolitical, they are spiritual. This is a war against God's covenant, against the people chosen to carry his name, against the land marked for his return. That is why this prophecy must come to pass. Because the one who lifts his hand against the purposes of God is not fighting a nation. He is challenging the Almighty. The breaking of the bow means a collapse of power, a divine targeting of military pride, and a warning to all who trust in their own might. It is no accident that Iran's aggression has increased. It is no accident that Israel is watching. The prophecy is not dead, it is waiting. It is breathing beneath the surface of headlines and intelligence briefings. When Jeremiah declared this word, there was no Islamic Republic, there were no missiles or centrifuges, yet he saw the day. He saw the strike before the technology existed. He heard the sentence before the weapons were formed, and he recorded it for a time such as this. The world sees tensions, heaven sees fulfillment. The bow is being prepared for breaking. Israel stands today not as a political accident or a product of modern warfare, but as a fulfillment of ancient prophecy. Her very existence is a testimony that what God has spoken, he will perform. And as the tensions rise in the Middle East, Israel does not react like any other nation because she was never meant to be just another nation. She is a sign, a vessel, a prophetic marker on the world stage. What the world interprets as strategic silence is actually the echo of divine instruction. Israel's history has always included seasons of watchful silence followed by sudden, decisive action. Whether in the days of Joshua, Gideon, or David, or the modern-day raids of Entebbe, or the Six-Day War, Israel has been marked by divine timing and heavenly strategy. In today's landscape, with Iran threatening annihilation, Hezbollah building its arsenal, and proxies surrounding her borders, Israel is not reacting with chaos, but with calculation. It is not a posture of fear, but of preparation. The world media may not see what is being formed behind the veil, but heaven does. Israel's war rooms are not driven by impulse. They are aligned with a deeper orchestration. She is being positioned not just militarily, but prophetically. And those who study the prophetic word can see the patterns aligning. The ancient threats are resurfacing. The names are familiar, and the spiritual battle is intensifying. But Israel's silence is not weakness. It is the calm before prophecy strikes. Just as in biblical times, when the people circled Jericho in silence before the walls fell, or when Gideon's army stood still until the moment of victory, there is a rhythm to Israel's response. Iran's provocations are not going unnoticed. The intelligence is flowing. The strategies are forming. The alliances are shifting. But what guides Israel is not just defense policy. It is destiny. Her actions are tied to the scrolls of old, to the promises given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. She is surrounded by enemies, but never alone. Her silence is filled with purpose. Her restraint is not dictated by fear, but by prophecy. Second Amendment rhetorica. And as Iran moves forward in arrogance, believing time is on their side, they fail to see the hand that moves history is already writing the next chapter. When the moment comes, when Israel acts, it will not be a surprise to those who understand the times. It will not be just a military event, but a divine move on the chessboard of the end times. Every jet launched, every strike calculated, every decision made will echo something ancient. because Israel is not just responding to threats, she is fulfilling something written long before her rebirth in 1948. Her posture today is the same as it has been in every age of survival and victory: watchful, prepared, chosen, and positioned. And those who seek to destroy her fail to realize they are not only coming against a people, but against the prophetic timeline of God himself. When the question is asked, who is Israel targeting next? It misses the true dimension of what is unfolding. The answer doesn't come from military strategy rooms or geopolitical calculations, but from the pages of ancient prophecy. It is not Israel who ultimately chooses the target, it is heaven. The prophetic blueprint revealed in Jeremiah 49 shows that divine judgment is already in motion. The stage is not being set for an ordinary war, but for a divine act. The nations rage, leaders plot, armies rise. But behind it all is the sovereign hand of God directing history toward its appointed end. Israel, though prepared and watchful, is not acting on her own. She is the arrow, but not the archer. She is the vessel, but not the origin of the strike. The prophecy against Elam reveals the divine verdict. I will bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven and scatter them. This is the language of judgment. This is not about a single battle or one political move. This is the shaking of a nation under divine wrath. The four winds indicate a force that no man can control, a sweeping, multi-directional storm that dismantles foundations and leaves no place of refuge. When the bow of Elam is broken, it won't just be a military blow. It will be a spiritual statement to the world that God still judges nations and he still defends his covenant. The modern world wants to believe that history is random, that alliances and wars are crafted only by human will. But the scriptures show us something different. Kingdoms rise and fall by the decree of heaven. And when God appoints a moment, nothing can delay it. Israel is being moved like a piece on a divine chessboard. Her next action will not just be reaction, it will be fulfillment. Iran has declared its hatred. It has armed itself. It has sought to encircle Israel and choke her borders. But it has also positioned itself under the weight of a prophecy that is waiting for its final breath. The God who declared the end from the beginning is not neutral. He has chosen sides. He has made covenants. And when he moves, he doesn't miss. The divine target is not determined by today's threats, but by ancient rebellion. Elam lifted itself in pride, and so will fall. The spiritual battle that surrounds Israel is not simply political. It is heavenly, it is ancient, and it is accelerating. When Israel acts, it will be as a tool of heaven, releasing judgment written long ago. The weapons may be modern, but the war is as old as Eden. The battlefield may look familiar, but the real conflict lies in the unseen. This is not Israel versus Iran. This is prophecy versus pride, covenant versus curse, destiny versus defiance. And the target is marked not by radar, but by righteousness.